Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays, Stick the Landing, Contextualized Instruction. I'm so happy to be here with you this Wednesday. I'm Vanessa Nicholson, the subject matter expert that'll be doing your professional development today. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things that I want to go over. If you have a question, please type it into the Q&A option. Your microphones will be muted. You will be in listen-only mode. Today's presentation is being recorded. It will be archived and available on the IPDate website within 48 hours. So before we get started, I just want to go over some objectives of what we expect you to learn by the end of this webinar. Today, we want you to be able to define contextualized instruction and explain why it's essential for adult learners in AGE, including adult basic education, ESOL, English speakers of other languages, and integrated education and training. Design mini lessons using real-world text, tasks, and scenarios that align with instructional goals, and provide instructors with strategies to create simple, contextualized activities. Before we get started, I just want to outline how we're going to spend our time together today, as I'm so excited to be here. We're going to talk about contextualized instruction. What is CI? Go over those traditional teaching methods versus the contextualized teaching methods. Talk about contextualized instruction versus integrated education and training. And then talk about some strategies and how to contextualize those materials. So we're ready to go ahead and get started. To understand why contextualized instruction matters, let's start by looking at what the research tells us. Did you know that students who are given contextualized instruction were more likely to persist in college-level training, earn credits towards a certificate or degree, and show gains in overall basic skills? I'm just going to pause here for a few seconds because I think that's really important. This next study reinforces the impact, especially when we look at skill progression in math. Did you know that in one study, students in contextualized developmental math courses progressed at a much higher rate, 86% versus 59%, than students in traditional developmental education? Again, I'm going to pause for a few seconds because I think these are some really important studies. So what exactly do we mean when we say contextualized instruction, and why does it matter so much for our adult learners? Contextualized instruction is using academic content to teach real-world skills and applications. Contextualized instruction helps adult learners by merging academic content with workplace skills. Contextualized instruction is beneficial to our adult learners because it helps with retention when they can apply it to the real world. They are interested in learning, and it can also keep them engaged. This can make them feel like they are reaching their goals and make learning relevant. Contextualized instruction also helps with closing the gap between adult education and CTE. To really see the difference, let's compare contextualized instruction to more traditional teaching approaches. Now, a lot of us already know about that traditional teaching method because, I grew up with the traditional teaching method, but the traditional teaching method involves teaching in a linear fashion where subjects are not integrated. While this approach may work for learners, it is more teacher-centered and doesn't help with engagement or retention. Students who are engaged often can recall or apply the skill they have learned. In addition, most of our adult students want a career or job, so it's important to expose them beyond that traditional teaching approach. In contextualized instruction, it's more student-centered, real-world problem-solving, portfolios, integrated curriculum, and then students can apply those skills immediately. I remember, and I think we all have a lesson like this when we're in maybe elementary school or middle school where your teacher asks you to use a perimeter to create your own house. I remember that lesson. It sticks out to me, it just sticks out to me really well versus just me just adding up different lines to get perimeter. I can more apply that. And now that I'm an adult and I have a home, I can see where that perimeter fits in. So as you can see, the traditional teaching method does work, but the contextualized approach works a lot better for real world problem solving, and it's useful for students so they can apply those skills immediately. All those CIs backed by many research articles, quantitatively and qualitatively, on improvement in student outcomes. And I wish that we could all use it forever and ever and ever because I love it so much. There is some challenges. Number one, there is not that much contextualized instruction materials out there. Usually instructors have to take time and develop their own. Additionally, you may be an organization or institution that does not back the use of contextualized instruction long-term for student engagement and motivation. Sometimes you may have students like me who are used to the traditional teaching methods and may have difficulty adapting to a contextualized approach, especially if that's the only method they've experienced. So you may be thinking, okay, Vanessa, I got it. You went over contextualized instruction. I know what it is, and it's integrated education and training. It's IET. It's close, but it's not. And I included this slide up here because I want to make sure that we understand the difference between contextualized instruction and IET. Let's look at the comparisons, okay? So if you look at contextualized instruction, it's all about embedding skills. If you look at integrated education and training, and I will call it IET, it's about using those workforce preparation activities, those CTE skills, and those academic content. Contextualized instruction can be one teacher. The one teacher does it all, does everything and all things. In IET, it can be multiple teaching models. Contextualized instruction is flexible. IET is pretty structured as it must follow and lead to a career pathway. Okay. Contextualized instruction may use math to read a grocery receipt. IET, students use math to obtain a real retail cashier certification training. And then it can serve as one component within IET, and it can stand alone with contextualized instruction. With IET, it's a structured model under WIOA. Here's another way to think of it when you're trying to make sure that you understand the difference between contextualized instruction and IET. Contextualization is those clever ways you teach in class that make skills feel real and useful right away. It's like turning a reading exercise into figuring out a work schedule instead of just, having students learn random words. IET is the whole program, the whole thing. Okay, it's built from the ground up, combining basics with job skills and training to get folks credentials and working faster. It's not just one lesson, it's the whole program. Whereas contextualizing, you can do one lesson, you can do a week. It's a lot of variations, but IET is not that. Now that we understand the idea of contextualized instruction, let's see what contextualized instruction looks like in action. All right, so I know you can see my screen. Let's go ahead and look at the left side of the screen. I think we've all done this. I think we've had teachers, we just all do this. We just want to add up some numbers real quick. We're going to line up the decimal points. We're going to master that concept. This is the classic worksheet we use. And sometimes I do understand this may be the way to go. But now look at the right side of the screen. What do you notice? You notice a grocery store receipt. No, it doesn't look like an actual receipt, but pretend it looks like a receipt. It's like a little printout. But you can have students shop for groceries in your class. You can have a pretend store, but students shop for groceries all the time anyways, right? So they should know how to add up the groceries they buy, okay? They should know how to add it up with tax, add it up after tax, before tax. You can have students figure out a lot of things. You can also add different items to the receipt. This makes learning meaningful and memorable. This makes learning stick versus on the left side, I just added up numbers, which is great. And like I said, that's useful sometimes. But to make the learning stick, I think the contextualized approach is more useful. So you want to start contextualizing. You're thinking, okay, Vanessa, I'm ready. You said enough. Let me get started with this. But I want you to start with the why. Before you jump into contextualizing lessons, pause and ask yourself, what do my students want to achieve? Some of the common goals students have are to learn English, earn a GED, start a career, or get a better job. Are there any other goals students come to you with? And I want you to think about this, and then I want you to type your answer in the chat. I'll give you some time to do that. Think about the goals. I know I named some, but maybe there's some I haven't named that you would love to share. Give you a second to think about it. Basic digital literacy, yep. Integrate better into the community, yep. To get a driver's license, oh yeah, definitely. Helping children complete their schoolwork, better job, navigate healthcare, that's really essential. Yep, GED to college degree, love hearing it, keep it coming. Get a promotion, definitely. Transferring credentials from their country and passing certification tests, for sure. Start a business. I'm going to give a little bit more teacher wait time. Perfect. Navigate society systems. Yep. GED, citizenship. Thank you for answering. A couple more seconds, just in case. All right. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Educate their kids. Perfect. So many of you already know your student goals through an intake process you may have at your institution or in your classroom. These aren't always separate. A student working on English might also need a GED and want a better job. When you know their goals, you can make lessons relevant. Connecting language, math, or reading to real life situations is what matters to them. Contextualization equals relevance. When lessons connect to student goals, learning feels practical and motivating. So, once you've identified your students' goals, it is also important to narrow down the skills you want to contextualize. Now, you can contextualize everything, although starting out, I don't recommend that, but you can. But think about the skills you want to contextualize. You can do academic skills, workplace skills, career focused skills, soft skills, or technical skills. And I gave an example right here. If a student wants a better job, what skills will help them obtain a better job? And I listed all the skills: language, math, digital literacy, and soft skills like communication. Right. So once we identify the student goals and what skills they need, you can then develop the contextualized activities. So if you look on my left, I have student goals, and then across I have academic skills, workplace industry, and the contextualized activity I developed. So a student comes and they want to learn English. The academic skills that they probably will need is speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And then the workplace industry skill I would use for that is communication, teamwork, and maybe they want to get into healthcare. And then the contextualized activity is I would have them role play. That way they practice communicating with a coworker, which will help them learn English. All right. I'll skip down to get a career. A student comes in and they want to get a career. Skills they need is digital literacy, especially with AI taking off. I mean, AI is almost embedded into every career about now. They definitely need that. Workplace industry would be problem solving, adaptability, again, if the student was into healthcare. And then I have for the contextualized activity, interpret a patient chart. Okay. I also have listed here, get a GED and get a better job. I'll pause for a few seconds for you to go ahead and read those two. Right. Contextualized instruction doesn't have to occur in one fashion. There are multiple ways to do contextualized instruction. Again, you can do one lesson, you can do multiple lessons, you can do an entire course, you can do an entire program, or you can do multiple programs. So now let's shift into some concrete strategies you can use right away to contextualize. One of the first strategies, which I love, is called reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching is a student-led strategy that helps readers make sense of challenging text. It's built around 4 habits of good readers: predicting, questioning, clarifying, and summarizing. This strategy helps with contextualized instruction because it can be used with any real-world materials like a job ad, safety procedure, or patient intake form. Okay. The instructor first models these habits while reading a short passage aloud, and then students will take turns leading the groups through each step. Over time, they become more confident about guiding the discussions themselves. So if we were to contextualize, students would read something directly related to their goals, use the steps, which I'll show you on the next slide, to unpack it, talk through vocabulary, and check understanding together. Reciprocal teaching keeps reading purposeful and tied to life outside the classroom. For adult learners, it encourages conversation, teamwork, and applied learning. All the things that we know that help them connect reading strategies to the situations that matter most in their work and daily life. So, if you look at the screen, these are the steps to reciprocal teaching. And I just gave an example of what it is using forklift. So let's look at an example of how to use reciprocal teaching through contextualized instruction. All right. So each student is given a step as they read an informational text. So one student would have predicting, one student would have questioning, one student would have clarifying, one student would have summarize. Okay. So with predicting, one student would look at the title, heading, and picks. What do you think this section covers? Why? A student would then answer, and I have an example answer. I predict the text is about forklift rules because of the speed limit, probably to avoid accidents. Then another student would have questioning, ask 2-3 questions about the main points as they read. What's the max speed? Why check fluids daily? Then another student would do the clarifying. They would spot the difficult words or ideas. This student chose evacuate as a word. And then summarizing, where they would retell key points in their own 2 to 3 sentences. So you would divide students into groups and each of them get a role. If your students aren't ready for that, then you can do it whole group. You can say, hey, we're all going to work on predicting. We're going to think, pair, share. Everybody's going to predict together. Then we're all going to work on questioning. You can do it that way as well if you don't think your students are ready for this, ready to do group work with reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching is more than just involving students. Your students are actively engaged and they're interacting with the text. It's just another way. You know how, when we were talking about closed reading, if you don't know about it, closed reading is another way to interact with text, how students are reading text multiple times and marking the text. Reciprocal teaching is just another way for students to interact with the text in that fashion. So with this example, you can see that contextualized instruction can be simple. It doesn't have to take hours of planning. This is just something quick that I contextualized. With reciprocal teaching, although I named that there are 4 steps to reciprocal teaching, you can actually add a 5th step, which I love, which is reacting and responding. This has students make those self-connections. So this is not, like in reciprocal teaching, this is not a step that you need, but I add it because I like students to make connections to the text. So an example that the student would give is, I haven't worked with forklifts yet, but I like how clear these rules are. I'd feel safer starting a new job if everyone followed them, especially the part about checking the brakes every day. So that's a way to just add it. There are different variations to reciprocal teaching. If you have students that are on a lower level and cannot do this independently, you may want to start with sentence frames. I said you can do it whole group, but you can also even do it with sentence frames where you give them part of the sentence and then they just fill it in. That might be a little easier for students that may not be able to start predicting or thinking out loud. You could do the same with clarifying, the same with questioning and reacting, responding. All right. Another contextualized approach that I love so much is project-based learning. Project-based learning is a strategy where adults learn by doing. Instead of learning skills in isolation, they work together on a real problem or project that ends with something useful, such as a plan, presentation, or product. Project-based learning is great for our adult learners because it gives them purpose. Students see how to apply those academic skills to real situations. It also encourages teamwork, problem solving, and decision making, just like they will need in the workplace. Furthermore, it builds confidence because every learner contributes something meaningful to the final product. So I have an example here of a project-based learning activity. I use the hospitality sector, and the project-based learning usually always starts with a driving question, a strong driving question at least. The driving question here is, how can we improve guest satisfaction at a hotel or restaurant? Following the driving question is the project outline. What are students going to do? Students will integrate the following skills: reading, review sample guest surveys or online reviews to find recurring issues; writing, draft an action plan or a brief proposal outlining solutions; math, calculate average wait times, customer ratings, or simple cost comparisons per proposed changes. And then there's some soft skills in there, such as communication, collaboration, time management through teamwork. As an instructor, you are not implementing project-based learning. You're not the one lecturing. You are the one facilitating. You're using guided inquiry, prompt reflection to maintain structure. And if you look at this example on here, we started with that driving question, and it went to research, where students are going to read short customer reviews. Then we gave some skills. Then we had some discussions, and then there's a presentation, and then there's an end product when it comes to project-based learning. So a great driving question for project-based learning has to have the following three elements: engaging, open-ended, and aligned to learning goals. And honestly, I could spend a whole professional development on project-based learning because it's that big, but I won't be able to do that in this webinar, but I can touch a little bit more on it. A great driving question also keeps the project going. It gives learners a reason to dig in, talk, think, use those critical thinking skills, and build something that matters. It's an open-ended question, okay? It's not something you can answer with a yes, no, or quick Google search. A great driving question needs thought, decision, and teamwork. Instead of what are the steps of good customer service, ask, how can our front desk team make guests feel welcome from check-in to check-out? It's real and relevant. Adults want to work on problems that feel connected to their job, family, or communities. When learning feels useful, effort goes up and frustration goes down. It's focused but rich. A good driving question zeroes in on one challenge, but it leaves enough room for reading, writing, and math and discussion skills to emerge naturally. So, on this next slide, I have a couple of driving questions, and I want you to let me know yes or no if it's a good driving question. And just type your answer in the chat. We're going to start with number one. So, let me know yes or no if number one's a good driving question, and I will read it aloud. Is it possible for a restaurant to stay profitable while lowering prices, increasing staff wages, offering more menu options, and improving customer satisfaction at the same time? Go ahead and put your answer in the chat. If you were developing a project-based learning activity, would that be a good driving question for students to do research on? Yes or no? And I'll give you a chance. I'm seeing a bunch of no's. Okay. And you are correct. That is not a strong driving question for project-based learning. And here's why. It's a yes or no question, dressed up as deep thinking. So great job. All right. Number two, how might we reduce guest wait times and improve satisfaction without increasing costs? Is this a good driving question? Yes or no? Would this be a question you can give students to develop some research, apply skills, develop a product or process for project-based learning? Yes or no? And you are correct. I see a lot of yeses. Yes, it is an open-ended, engaging question. It's aligned to goals. It's short, clear, authentic, and aligned with workplace skills and all the traits of a strong driving question. All right. Number three, is this a strong driving question, or is this a good one? Yes or no? What strategies can we use to design and promote a budget-friendly meal plan that improves community nutrition? Is that a good driving question? Yes or no? Perfect, perfect, perfect. And the answer is yes. It is a good driving question. It is actionable and specific. What strategies can we use to design and promote gives a clear task and end goals, creating a sharing a meal plan. All right. And then the last one is number 4. Should hotel staff always follow a strict customer service script no matter what situation they face, even if the guest seems angry or upset? All right, give you a few seconds on that. Great, great work, everyone. No, it is close-ended, and the question should leaves you to say yes or no. It doesn't encourage deeper thinking or discussion. It's also not action-oriented, and it asks for an opinion or judgment rather than promoting our learners to create design or develop a solution. In addition, it is limited to innovation. That's right, Althea, to opinion-based. Correct. That is right. All right. So one last thing I will highlight about project-based learning. In addition to a strong driving question, and all of you did such an excellent job choosing yes or no for those driving questions, we need to talk about voice and choice, student voice and choice. When we talk about voice and choice, we're talking about giving our adult learners a real say in what and how they learn, okay? Adult students bring a mix of experiences, goals, and perspectives into the classroom. And project-based learning works best when those are part of the process. This approach helps learners take real ownership. When projects connect to something that matters to them personally or professionally, they invest more effort and reflect more deeply. The goal isn't just to complete a task and check off the box and say, oh, we're done. It's to create something meaningful and relevant to their lives outside the classroom. Okay? Start small. Ask what issues or goals matter most to them. Build projects around those themes, allow different ways to show learning, and encourage reflection so they can see how their choices shape the outcome. Right. So another strategy that I love is Socratic scenario seminars. Developed by the Greek philosopher Socrates, the Socratic method is a dialogue between teacher and students instigated by the continual probing questions of the teacher. In a concerted effort to explore the underlying beliefs and shapes the student's view and their opinions. In contextualized instruction, reading, writing, speaking, math, and problem solving are taught through content that feels authentic. A Socratic seminar increases that by turning a real issue, article, or scenario into a shared inquiry. Learners unpack the content through guided discussion, building skills like critical reading, active listening, and reasoning in context. All right. So the Socratic scenario seminars, it's a speaking activity where students analyze the response to realistic situations. The instructor doesn't provide the answer. Well, they're not supposed to. They're supposed to use questions to keep probing the students and guiding them towards deeper thinking and problem solving. All right. So here I have an example, and I used the argument standard R2.4, and I have students free customer service scripts used in hotels. So the driving question, should hotel staff always follow a strict customer service script, even when guests are upset? So the teacher would ask the driving question, and then students would continue to answer and ask questions, probing. The teacher doesn't necessarily answer the question, okay? Socratic seminars are also open-ended. It's not yes or no. It's aligned to learning goals and relevant to the scenario. Okay, a true Socratic seminar, students generate follow-up questions during the discussion. The teacher is not the one driving or following up the questions. You may be wondering, though, in a Socratic seminar, if the students keep asking questions and pointing it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, when does it end, right? Is there an end? And the energy sometimes dips or time's up, usually after 20 to 40 minutes. The instructor can signal when the time is up, but it can honestly keep going. All right. One last thought before we shift, and I show you what you can use with the Socratic seminars is what's still lingering. Students might summarize key insights together. So all the questions they kept probing, you might ask students to go ahead and then summarize those. So after the initial driving question is read, where you read a driving question, students may have difficulty coming up with those questions. So I created a Socratic dice that can be used, and you just, it's already going to be in your workbook. You print it out, you make it into a dice. And if students have trouble coming up with questions or digging deeper, they just throw each other the dice, and that would get them to come up with questions and ask each other questions and dig deeper. All right. Another strategy I really like is QSSSA or QSSSA. This strategy works well for your ESOL and lower ABE students. Okay. This strategy, developed by John Seidlitz, is an excellent strategy you can use because it supports structured speaking and thinking in real-world scenarios. So the Q stands for question. Teacher is going to ask an open-ended question related to the content and context. Then you give everybody time to think. Then you create a signal. Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever the signal is, you will signal everybody to respond. Then you provide a sentence stem to scaffold language. Students, write in the sentence stem. Then they share with a partner or a whole class. And then the teacher checks understanding through discussion and quick writes or exit tickets. So let's look at an example for QSSSA. All right. And in this one, I have a text excerpt. City Council approves a 20% parking fee increase starting next month to fund road repairs. Several community members worry it can make downtown parking unaffordable for low and middle income families. You, the teacher, instructor, would ask a question. How might this new parking fee affect people's household budgets or daily routines? Pause to give students time to think. You give them a signal, thumbs up, hands in the air, whatever the signal is when they're ready to share their ideas. Then you give them the sentence stem. And as students advance, they may not need the stem part. This change matters because one impact could be, this reminds me of when. Then you could do a think, pair, share, where students, share their sentence stems with each other. And then after a partner shares, you can have a few pairs read out to the group. And then you and the instructor will listen for the reasoning and examples that they just pulled. All right. Another way to support learning transfer is helping students see how they think through problems through metacognitive mapping. Okay. Metacognitive mapping is a strategy that helps learners visualize their thinking process while solving a problem or learning a concept. It's essentially a map of how you think about thinking, which is what metacognition means. Metacognitive mapping builds self-awareness. It also helps students plan, monitor, and evaluate their approach. In addition, it encourages problem solving and critical thinking because students see connections between ideas and steps. All right. So on this slide, I have an example of using metacognitive mapping. All right. So instructors should use metacognitive mapping when you want students to plan, monitor, and reflect on their thinking. It can be used when introducing a concept or problem solving, during a task, or after completing a task as a reflection activity. So let's look at the example on the screen. Here goes the problem. The construction company needs 45 bricks to build one small wall. They have 540 bricks. How many small walls can they build? The question is probed. How many walls can be built with 540 bricks if each wall needs 45 bricks? And then you do the metacognitive mapping. What do I know? What is the problem asking? Strategy, steps, check, and reflect. All right. The next one is role play, which you can role play a lot during contextualization. Role play helps adults practice real-world communication and problem solving. It takes the skills they're learning, like speaking, listening, or reading, and place them in familiar settings, such as the workplace, community, or daily life. For ESOL students or lower level learners, you can provide sentence stems for role playing. Also encourage a professional tone and clear communication when role playing. I created a role play checklist because a lot of times you'll just, we just tell students, here you go, role play the situation. But how do we know if they're actually communicating, listening, role playing correctly without a sort of rubric or checklist? So you can use a checklist while students are role playing and observe and listen. Now that we've gone over several strategies, I want to show you now how we can map reading standards to workplace skills or soft skills for contextualization. The standard we are going to focus on is informational text structure. As you can see, the levels are listed on the left with the benchmarks in the middle and how I contextualized on the right under workplace contextualization. We're going to look at this in the next few slides, and you will see how I broke it down. All right. Remember, the skill is text structure, and you can see the progression from NRS level 1 all the way to NRS level 4. All right. So we will start with NRS level 1 and look how text features connects to workplace forms. So on the left, I have the level and the grade equivalency level. Then I have the reading standard in the middle, which is at this level, they'll use text features, including titles, headings, captions, graphs, maps, glossaries, and or illustrations to predict and confirm the topic, as well as demonstrate understanding of the text. For me to contextualize this, I had students locate a specific section, for example, such as work history or emergency contact on a workplace form or job application, and then they're going to use the heading to predict what information is needed. So they're looking for those text features, all right, on work history or an emergency contact. And I created them on the screen. I just probably timed, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a sample job application where they have sections that they can look at, locate, and also predict. And this is for GE 00.1.9. That means those reading on that level right there. Then in NRS level 2, grade equivalency level 2.0 to 3.9, you'll see the progression of the standard. Now they're explaining how text features, print and digital, contribute to the meaning and identify the text structure of chronology, comparison, and cause and effect in text. So in this level, I have students use a safety manual to explain steps in technical text. And that applies to that reading standard. So they're going to explain why the following steps have to be, done in a specific order. And if not, how will it cause accidents or mistakes? So this is at this level. And I'm having students, and this is contextualization. I'm taking a basic skill and using a workplace document to contextualize it. We're moving on up to NRS 3. Explain how text features, including charts, graphs, diagrams, timelines, animations, there's interactive elements on web pages such as hyperlinks and so on, contribute to the overall meaning and identify the text structure of problem, solution, sequence, and description in text. So in NRS level 3, students are using employee weekly schedules to explain text features, okay? So talk about how the layout makes it easier to see the sequence of shifts and solve scheduling problems like missing a day. Think about these questions as, students are looking at the schedule. How does the chart help an employee find their schedule quickly? What text feature makes it easy to understand? How does the layout show sequence? How can this chart help scheduling problems? Now we're moving up to NRS level 4 with that grade equivalency from 6th to 8th grade level. And the reading standard, now we're moving into the deeper part, which is analysis. Analyze how individual text sections and or features convey a purpose and our meaning in text. So in this, how I contextualize this, students will read a workplace safety or onboarding guide. Then they will analyze how the text headings, bullet points, and diagrams each help explain procedures or clarify rules. All right. And as you look at NRS 4, think about these questions or have students think about these questions. What does it tell you about the topic? Look at the heading. Look at the numbering. How do they make the steps clear? Look at the diagram. How does the visuals help you understand where to go? There's also an explanatory paragraph. How does it add Meaning, and why is the order of those steps, how to evacuate, important? All right, so let's pause now and pull together the big ideas from today's session. Okay, contextualized instruction makes learning relevant and practical. It connects academic skills to real-world tasks. The strategies include role play, QSSA, metacognitive mapping, Socratic scenario seminars with that cube, reciprocal teaching, project-based learning with that strong driving question, voice and choice. Align activities with those NRS standards for measurable skills gains. Reflection and real-world connection are essential for the transfer of learning. So now that you learned about contextualized instruction, you may be wondering, where do I begin? Well, here are some practical first steps you can use. Start small. Just think of one lesson in the upcoming future that you can contextualize. It doesn't have to be the whole entire class period either. It can just be one lesson. Use real-world materials, job forms, safety checklists, menus, schedules. A lot of this you can get online. Plan for standards. Tie each activity to those standards: reading, writing, listening, speaking, and math. Engage learners. Use the strategies to help them interact with the text, interact with the content. Project-based learning, QSSA, reciprocal teaching, and then share ideas. Collaborate with colleagues to build a bank of contextualized lessons. That way you're not doing it all on your own. And then I wanted to share a couple references of where I got a lot of my research from. And it has been just a pleasure to be here with you today. I will pause at this time to see if I have any questions in Q&A. Let me see. All right, I don't see any at this point in time. So please give us your feedback. And as you are filling that out, the following Wednesday, April 22nd at 3 p.m., join us for our next webinar, Teaching IET Online with Intention, Support, Structure, and Engagement. And we really hope to see you there. And if you have any questions about contextualizing, feel free to email me. You should have everything in your workbook, but if you have questions beyond that, I'm more than happy to help, share, or answer any questions. Thank you so much for coming.